So I've revisited my articulator concept, and I'm already blown away by implementing this idea that I had. And the idea is, I'm giving it away for you people. It is basically you split the articulator into two main components. And thanks to MXXX and other systems that can do this, we can split spectrally so that this part is playing like the harsher attack, and this part is playing the more legato sustain, or what they call the tonal split. So you have the transient and you have the tonal section on the crossover. And so what that means is something very cool. And I just realized how cool this is going to be. So not only can you adjust where the split occurs, which means kind of changing the size of the transient and the size of the tonal, but when you have stacks of things effects-wise going into each of these systems, that means that you're going to have a huge amount of affecting potential on each side, so that it has like a life, so that you can sort of create more of a human quality, or just a more nuanced and evolving quality, or just more character. So as an example, one small example, what we're dealing with here is the concept of articulations. So one of the first things you might think of is vibrato. And when you split vibrato from transients, something different happens, which is that it creates a sort of sharp stab. As an example, here's the tone. And the reason that it sounds like that is because I just have the vibrato on the transient. And so if I went in here and I add another vibrato and I put it on the tonal or the sustain portion, then what we have is this. So that gives you an idea, and of course we can adjust the depth, of the potential for something like this, because that's a really cool, like, sharp, it sounds kind of out of pitch at this point, but you can of course change the range or whatever. But this is an example of how the main point to focus on with articulation is the attack and the release. And the sort of sustained in the middle, or the hold, what they call the hold, that's kind of this portion here of the crossover. So I don't think that a synthesizer exists like this, but what does exist like this is this effect process. And so what this is also is I have analog lab that's feeding this. And so therefore any instrument could be articulated with this concept and re-articulated. And so sort of guitarists have this idea of re-amping. And so what my master plan has been for a while is to re-articulate, but not just on an instrument, but on many kinds of like mixes or groups of instruments or whatever, because I thought that would be interesting quality to focus on just the articulation sort of mini mock-up concept over how many crazy things that I can do with effects. And so with that, it makes you focus on like real world physical things that occur with real instruments. And so that makes it a little trickier, but it provides a slightly different result than just plastering it to all heck with DSP. So anyway, vibrato is one example. There are other things like, you could shorten this and lengthen this to make it like have a stab. And that's where transient would come in, and you could adjust the transient on both the transient portion, but also on the sustain, because I have a transient in there as well. So you could adjust the what they call the transient on different levels, and you have a different threshold for the transient as well. And this is just a basic transient attack stomp, whereas there are many other very sophisticated things that could be done. So what's the point of this? Well, okay, getting to the main overall thing is, when a violin like plays in weird ways, it's creating this difference in the attack, but it's also in the sustain. And so that's what we're going after here. Now, there's of course a bunch of other stuff that happens in the middle of that, and that's what we're trying to do here is capture that magic. We could potentially make another one in the middle, of this concept, but really our idea is this phantom middle that you can use by adjusting this, and then loading each of these transients or each of these splits up with different kinds of effects. And we're focusing on articulation effects, so I wouldn't be worrying about delays and choruses and things like that. But I may want to add something that may provide something closer to a real world articulation so that I can create. Basically, the whole point is to add more dimension to the synthesized acoustic instruments. It's not just to make creative sound design, it's to make more realistic synthesized samples come to life, or more realism in physical modeling. All right, I'll leave it at that. I've said enough. This is basically the genial idea of what's going on with splitting this attack-release concept for Articulator.